The new mayor of Maitland is Alderman Pat Hughes, a Millers Forest farmer who has 17 years' experience in local government. Alderman Hughes defeated the closest candidate, Alderman Peter Blackmore, 11 votes to 4. After donning the robes of office, Alderman Hughes clearly defined some of the areas he will be working to improve. He said his greatest concern was the chaotic road and parking conditions prevalent in and adjacent to the central business district of Maitland. He said strong representations would be made to the Department of Main Roads to have works in the city completed as soon as possible. Alderman Hughes also paid tribute to former mayor for the past 2 years, Alderman Ken Guy. Alderman Guy will still be actively involved in the decision-making process, however. He was appointed deputy mayor, defeating Alderman Way 9 votes to 7.
The utmost support.
Talk to the average car driver about heavy trucks, about semi-trailers, and they'll shudder. They'll think they're the worst curse on the road. But of course that's a pretty narrow viewpoint. And if car drivers were to really have a look at the road through the eyes of a truck driver, they might have a different view on the subject. Because if you've got 16 metres of vehicle, 38 tonnes of it, to keep safe on the road, you really need to anticipate, concentrate far more than you do in an ordinary little motor car. Quentin Knight is pretty typical of truck drivers. He does about 170,000 kilometres a year, a lot more than the average car driver. G'day.
Yeah.
It keeps you pretty busy.
The key to driving a heavy vehicle safely, Quentin says, is keeping your mind on the job. Same message we've now heard from so many expert drivers.
The whole idea of driving one is all anticipation. I've got to be driving this vehicle as well as 2 or 3 that are actually in front of me. People here now, for instance, I get over here, they get quite upset at times. They don't understand the reason for me doing this. It makes my turn a lot harder. I've got to go out and turn a lot sharper to miss the traffic islands in the middle. But it serves as a very good point for other vehicles to move around, you know.
Because they'll go to the left up here, yeah?
Yeah, well, I'd say probably 70% of vehicles that come out of there all turn left up here, and I'm going straight ahead. So I stay in this lane. I treat all lights as being red. It's a lot easier for me, especially loaded, to keep the vehicle rolling rather than come to a halt.
But you'll get a car driver that'll dart in front of you and fill the spot.
That's right. Now this is where the problem arises. When they dart in front like that, well, I can't. I've left plenty of room for the pull-up, but when the vehicle jumps in front, he's knocked my pull-up the distance of dead ground that's in front of this vehicle plus his own length.
Yeah, because that's another point. The car driver doesn't realise he can't really be seen.
No, once he gets in there, you can lose a large or a medium-sized family sedan. You can lose it in front of the vehicle without any problems at all. That fella there switched on. Now he's cut across there. This is the big thing. I mean, it wasn't dangerous. He didn't do anything wrong. Now he's cut across there. There was no one in front of him. It wasn't dangerous. He didn't do anything wrong. And there was no one in this lane he had to get in. There was no one in front of him. Come across. Now you probably notice how the heavy vehicle, now there's a fair chance he'll come across, but he's given me heaps of room, and himself.
Because that's another thing too, a truck driver has a pretty good incentive to keep his vehicle in one piece because it's his living and it's worth a lot of money.
Well, that's right. There's a lot of money tied up in a vehicle, whether it be yours or a company's vehicle. What people have got to understand that these blokes are professionals. They're every bit as a professional, say as Peter Brock, Alan Moffat. They make their living wholly and solely from driving.
I think a lot of car drivers, unfortunately, get in, drive off, and only have a fraction of their minds engaged in the job. You can't do that with a truck. It's a 100% job.
Well, if you're going to be thinking about something else, then you might as well pull up and go home, because you're only going to get yourself and someone else into a lot of problems. The situation here, for instance, that we've got, where because this fella here they don't want to let anyone go. They've all got to beat everyone else. No thought, no anticipation. They drive 6 feet in front of them. They get themselves in their little car or their cocoon, and they feel that they're shut off from everybody else, and be surprised at the amount of people that'll come, and because you're travelling in the same direction as they are, they'll come and sit within 3 inches behind you, and every 4 or 5 minutes they'll stick their nose out to try and pass. And of course, being so close behind, they have to launch themselves out into the oncoming traffic just to see what's coming. And of course, this is where a lot of accidents do occur. As I say, it's made me not only drive the vehicle that I'm in, but I've also got to try and drive 3 or 4 vehicles that are in front, a couple behind, beside me. You've got to anticipate everyone else's moves. I mean, you don't have to be driving a truck to do that. You should be doing that when you're driving a motor vehicle or riding a motorcycle or even a push bike. If you're using a public thoroughfare, you've got to have your wits about. You've got to be switched on. This is the big thing.
Well, at least this one looked like it was tolerating, if not totally enjoying it all, the annual shearing of the high school's flock of black sheep. On the board was Les Scrimban of Singleton, watching on many of the school's 300 agriculture students, and in the pens waiting, a more motley crew of potential shawls and jumpers you've never seen. The flock has been an integral part of the school's agriculture program for 12 years and has been selectively bred for colour, style, wool type and fertility. And while only small, numbering around 32 head, it's proving very successful and economical on all fronts. The clip is sold to home spinners for $4 a kilo, and there's never any shortage of people willing to take some or to help. In fact, the flock is managed and run by the students themselves. They obviously regard them as more than just four-legged wool factories, although understandably the annual shearing is one of the highlights of their spring. The other, of course, being the arrival of the next generation of jumpers. The baby lambs that escaped the shears this year being comforted and prepared for when they too will be so ungraciously fleeced.
The association administers local greyhound racing, trotting, turf meetings and the annual show. The association's auditors have released figures showing the association to be running at tens of thousands of dollars in the red and has forecast a deficit of hundreds of thousands by this time next year. Wyong Chamber Vice President Paul Levick is
what
furious.
Have they lost so far?
The facts are they have just lost, in 1985, their loss has been $70,000 from a profit of 208. Now they've done that in 2 years. The predicted further 12 months is a further loss of another 272,000, further on top of that again. We cannot allow this to happen and exist anymore, and therefore we're calling a meeting next Thursday night at the RSL Club at Wyong, where we are going to explain to the public at large exactly what's happening.
Mr Levick, has the State Sport Minister, Michael Cleary, been informed about the situation?
Yes, he has. As a matter of fact, the Chamber of Commerce brought it to the attention of the Wyong Shire Council 3 or 4 months ago, where it was a unanimous decision of the Council to meet with the Minister by way of a deputation. We did not get that request of the Minister. We were told that Harry Moore, the member for Tuggerah, advised the Minister that we were only a minority group, that there was nothing wrong with the association whatsoever, and therefore we did not get the request with the Minister that we wanted.
Long-serving association committee member Murray Doyle says natural increases in prize money contribute
and
to the
also
deficit,
to the show
along
and the
with other
Agricultural
factors.
Association. A lot of the figures that are shown in there are figures such as depreciation, which are not actual cash flow figures, but there are figures too that show for ground improvement and capital expenditure, and we don't envisage those figures to occur in this coming year. We've had a finance meeting. Our accountants, with their projected figures, have said that they don't see us being viable unless we can cut that figure by $250,000. At our finance meeting, we felt that taking in all avenues of the association, that we can prune those figures by 200,000.
Mr Doyle, why isn't the association making a profit?
Well, I don't think that any association of this nature does operate in the black.
The Cowboys are set to meet the Thunderbolts at the International Sports Centre on October 13. Today, the Cowboys trained on the ground to get to know the local turf. The match will be the second in a series of 6 between the two teams. Each match is being played in a different centre around the state to stir up interest in the game, with the hope of starting a state competition next year. Those turning to gridiron include many rugby league players. The Cowboys lineup boasts Greg Brentnell, a former Australian rugby league fullback, and there are other familiar faces, including Greg and Stephen Brown from South Newcastle and Michael Harris. Greg Brown loves the game because of the variety.
And it's not as demanding aerobically on the body, so that you can play it in the off season of league and still front up fresh for rugby league, but it's complementing the skills of rugby league, so I think it can only help my game in football.
The two-day festival will see more than 180 events decided. Today it was riding skills such as pairs and dressage. The idea of the festival is to promote the skills of both horse and rider. Club President Des Ledlin says interest in horses has been growing with each year the festival is held. All age groups were out today, from this junior rider on a Shetland pony up to the open grades. Judges have come from as far away as Dubbo, Tamworth and Gunnedah. The competition continues tomorrow with lots of action, including jumping, flagging and keyhole events. The girls came from Hamilton, Foster, Wingham, McCulley's Gap and Warhope. The entrants were judged today on their personality, community spirit, general knowledge and interest in the National Heart Foundation. The quest raises funds to help research into heart disease and to pay for education programs. The Queen of Hearts for this district is Debbie Fotheringham. She's a shop assistant with Coles New World and received plenty of assistance from her local service clubs. She goes to the state finals in Sydney next month. Quest Director Valda Hamilton says public awareness of heart disease is a top priority.
It's direct to the public education on how to prevent heart disease, how to rehabilitate after having the problem, and it's just an ongoing thing, and it certainly is ever increasing. Although the heart death rate, still at 50% of all public, all population, is being kept at bay now through this education, we feel.
With the steelworks course in the pink of condition and the weather at its best behaviour, the scene was set for the 36-hole tournament. It's been 6 years since the event was played in Newcastle and 3 years since a Newcastle player won it. There were some previous winners in the capacity field of 90. The Waratah Club's Ray Carlin, a 3 times winner as a junior, and a share senior winner in 1979 with Bruce Boyle. Other locals, Brian Berry, Neville Cole, Greg Gillard and Peter Johnson, were also expected to figure in the low scores, as was Peter Sellop, the local course champion, who had recently returned a 6 under par round.
The Shortland County Council's new administration centre was the only matter considered at today's meeting. The town planner, Mr Gary Fielding, disagreed with the transfer of the admin centre from the central business district to Douglas Street, Wallsend. He says that's one of the few sites which would be ideal for industrial development that would attract employment in the rapidly growing area. He says the development is inconsistent with the strategies and policies of the Hunter Regional Environmental Plan and the Council's objectives for the Newcastle CBD. But the Town Clerk's Coordination Committee recommendation, which was endorsed by the Administrator, disagreed. It says the Council should not interfere with any organisation's right to make a decision, providing the community was not disadvantaged. Some 36 conditions were placed on the $16 million development, which is due to begin construction in the near future.
This local street was closed to all traffic today as local council workmen resealed the road. But the men and machinery hit an obstacle they couldn't move, so they simply went around it. A short detour by the road surfacing equipment around this canary yellow Corona, and that problem was solved. The workmen had obviously pondered the question for some time. There was evidence of a lunch left unfinished in the gutter. But what happens when the car's owner returns and decides to park somewhere else? I suppose the council will return too. But until that time, the car will keep a lonely vigil, waiting to be set free from its asphalt prison.
Association President Lance Woods has gone public following the front page story in the Newcastle Star, which revealed the board's proposal.
If that's going to cost in the vicinity of $1.4 million or upwards, or whatever figure's been touted, then we will be saying that they should look at options within the current complex to save that figure from really going anywhere near the 1.4 or whatever's been touted. So we're looking at saying, as ratepayers ourselves and members of the association, we need to examine that as ratepayers as well and see where our money is actually going to.
Board President Alan McLaughlin counters that criticism by saying any plan to establish a separate office would only go ahead if beneficial to ratepayers.
Well, all it is at the moment is a review of possibilities for housing our Newcastle District Office in one clearly identified office. It's spread over the building at the moment. It would be much better if the customers who came to the Newcastle District Office could have all of their inquiries dealt with in one place. We're not only looking outside, we're also looking at our reallocation of our internal space. If the objective can best be satisfied by leasing other premises on a long or short-term basis, then we need to know what's available. And all that's happened at the moment is that inquiries have been made about what space may or may not be available and what it's likely to cost.